Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Pierre, and joining me as always is Tim.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. It's only 502 times or whatever this is now.
Yeah, I'm always happy to be back.
I don't believe a word of that. This is a horror movie podcast. We get together, we've watched a horror film, we talk about it. It's really quite that simple. And coming up on today's show, we are getting to the first big new release. Not the first one we've done, but the first big new release of 2022, which is Scream 5. Yes, I'm calling it Scream 5. They can sue me if they want. I refuse. I absolutely refuse to call this Scream.
What about 5 Cream? How do you feel about that?
I'll accept it. And yes, before anyone says anything, yes, they kind of poke fun at it in the movie a little bit. I don't care. It doesn't justify it. It doesn't just pointing it out does not mean that you suddenly get away with it. I do not agree with that at all. So this trend of naming sequels the original name again, but still being a sequel is no. I'm not about it.
Yeah. I mean, my big thing is, it seems like this was pretty well received. I don't know, what the box office or anything is like, but I think it could reasonably be assumed that they might be thinking about sequels. But
Tim, you're behind the curve because they've already announced a sequel.
They have? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what are they going to call it then? Scream 2?
That is a very good question. I mean, I imagine it will be Scream : something. Scream Return to Woodsboro, or Scream Ghostface Attacks, or something.
Yeah.
But, I mean...
Or like Ghostface Scream 6.
Or Scream 666.
Ooh, that's always a good one.
There you go. We've reached that point. We will start spoiler free. I know that we are a little bit later because we waited for it to be streaming before we got to reviewing this. So a lot of you may have seen it anyway, but for the sake of people who haven't, we will start spoiler free. We'll give you a warning before we go into the spoilers, and we'll get into things. I guess just before we give thoughts, the first impressions of this, it's probably worth just quickly recapping our general feelings on the series as a whole. I kind of fall into the camp of Scream was one of the first horror movies I ever saw. It has kind of a special place in my heart because of that, and of course it's a pretty good meta narrative that kind of harkens back to older horror movies. And the sequels range from okay to oh holy shit, what is this thing, why does it exist, it's terrible. That being Scream 3, just in case anyone wasn't sure which one I was shitting on there. I don't think it needs sequels. I think it's not necessarily something I really wanted to be a franchise. At least certainly not since I've been an adult anyway. I mean, I'm sure when I was like 12 I probably was like, yeah, give me 100 of them. But as an adult, I've just like Scream 4 is better than Scream 3 by quite a margin, and it's definitely got some interesting little quirks and ideas in it, but nothing that really justified bringing these characters back, doing Scream again. So I went into this one with fairly muted expectations, despite the buzz that it seemed to get in January. But would you like to recap your Scream history?
Sure. So I mean, yeah, similar to you as well. Like I, saw this pretty early on. It's weird. I do think the first movie is quite good, and I really liked it at the time. But I feel like I don't have as much like nostalgia or love for it as other people around our age do. Because I feel like for a lot of people, around our age, like this is kind of like their defining franchise. Like it's one like people really love and feel attached to. Where like, I don't know, I feel like more attached to like a lot of like 80s or franchises and stuff instead of Scream for whatever reason. But I mean, I still like it. It's one of those ones that's not really on the forefront of my mind, but when I go back and think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, no, actually as a franchise it is actually quite strong. The third one is the only one that's a real clunker for me. I don't mind like watching it though, like I do think it's bad, but like in a fun way sometimes. I don't like feel the need to totally skip it, and there's some things I like in it, but I'm not as big a fan of as 2 as some people are too. I feel like there's 2 is kind of like seems to be like a cult favorite for some people, which yeah, again, like there's some cool kills and stuff in it, but like some of the storyline stuff in that is like kind of weak to me. I don't really love it. And then almost seems like we're trying to be contrarian or something, because I feel like not a lot of people really like 4, but I actually like it quite a bit as well. Especially with like some of the things that are playing with, like the idea of reboots and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's good, and I really liked Emma Roberts' character in that. So yeah, I mean, overall, I do like the franchise. It's not like maybe one of my top franchises, but when I go back and watch them, I always have a good time. Like you said, there was a lot of buzz in this. I was seeing people being pretty high on it and everything, but the big thing, which I think you're on my side a little bit with this, is I don't think either one of us were big fans of the director's previous big buzzworthy horror movie, Ready or Not. It's not the worst thing in the world, but yeah, I didn't love it, and I think that maybe kind of tempered my excitement or expectations for this. But
I think I'd describe our review of that as lukewarm. Like I wasn't like shitting on it, but we weren't really feeling the praise or the excitement.
Definitely. I think the most I can say from it is that after watching that movie, I wasn't like super psyched to see like the next movie from these filmmakers, especially if they're tackling like a beloved franchise. I wasn't like listening to like full on reviews, but just kind of seeing like Twitter talk and stuff. Like people seem pretty high on this, so I think I was like mildly excited. At the very least, I'm always going to be curious about pretty much any big horror franchise coming back. So I was going in not the most excited, but I was like, all right, I'm happy to get a chance to see it.
So once again, we return to Woodsboro. There's a new Generation Z, are now the high schoolers. Our original trio of cast members who have survived the previous 4 films all return as well. Those being Courtney Cox, David Arquette, and Neve Campbell. And I went with their actor names for some reason rather than the character names. You know what I mean. Regardless, they're back. We got a new batch of characters. There's a new Ghostface of some kind running around, phoning people, killing people. It's there's not really much to describe plot wise other than just saying it's another Scream movie, because it's just doing more Scream stuff. It's not doing anything necessarily new in a sort of general premise way. So
yeah, and then one of the big hooks of the franchise is the mystery around it. So
the whodunit,
yeah. So you can't really, you don't want to give too much away.
Yeah. So that's the basic gist of it, and to be honest, that's it. I mean, I guess going in as well, I had kind of this weird feeling about it, because it's like, okay, we're going to be doing meta commentary on reboots and stuff and franchises coming back, and I'm like, well, they kind of did that in 4. That was kind of the 4 was doing that. Although now it's been another. In fact, I'll be honest, I had a bit of an existential crisis when I realized it was 11 years since Scream 4 came out, because I thought of that as the modern one. Now it's 11 years old.
Jeez Louise.
There's been enough of a new breed of reboot in the last 10 years that this is kind of skewing towards that type of reboot instead of the reboots that we had 10 years ago.
Right. I mean, I think, like, I don't really think it's a spoiler to say, like, kind of maybe the big, meta focus on this is the idea of, like, the legacy sequel. So, like, movies, like the 2018 Halloween and stuff like that. It kind of seems to be the route that they're tackling here.
Yes, notably, Halloween was the only horror example in the list they give. Now, don't get me wrong, I think I think the list they give is accurate, and I would describe them all as having the same template, to an annoying degree, which makes them kind of annoying to watch. It is kind of interesting that only one of them is horror as a franchise, and the rest are, Star Wars and Jurassic Park and Terminator. Like, it's all stuff that isn't horror, which I thought was a little bit curious in the sense that, well, you might be sort of tackling horror, like tropes and horror trends and things. So it's kind of funny that, and I know it has infected horror a little bit, and we even said Texas Chainsaw, the new one, was a little bit into that category. Although not as much as I think I thought it was going to be honest.
There's other stuff like that you can bring up. Like, I mean, the Texas, franchise as a whole has had, multiple, I guess, quote unquote, like legacy sequels where they kind of go back and like, oh, we're doing a prequel to the original or a sequel to the original. Yeah,
they've done it 5 times at this point, so it's not as novel.
Yeah, and of course, you got to talk about another big example, Leprechaun Returns, which
Oh,
was a legacy sequel.
shut up.
They did go back to the first one. Jennifer Aniston's character did not return, but they did mention her, and actually Oz was in it. So actually, yeah, so that would be a I think that would count.
Oz was why would Seth Green be in it? He wasn't in the original.
Not that dumb character. I'm talking about Ozzy from the first Leprechaun movie.
You know, I would love to know the percentage of people who genuinely knew which character you were talking about when you said Oz. I would love to know. Anyway, we are at the point where I'm going to ask Tim the question. What did you think of Scream 5?
Yeah, so I gotta say, I was pretty darn happy with it. Actually, liked it quite a bit. Again, yeah, really did not have much of an idea about what it was going to be like going into it, which is another thing that was I was actually pretty happy with. Is I haven't been able to get out to the theater as much, so it's always kind of like walking around landmines when a new movie comes out and it's like, all right, do I just have to stay off the internet for like 2 months until it's streaming? Yeah, luckily like nothing really got spoiled or anything. I wasn't being flooded with like trailers and articles that that was ruining stuff, so I thought it was a very nice surprise throughout most of the movie. But yeah, I gotta say, I was really happy. I have maybe a few minor complaints, but I mean, overall, I like the story. I like a lot of the new characters. Probably my biggest complaint is I do wish like we saw more of the friends kind of just hanging out and talking more about movies. Like that's always like one of the things I find most appealing about this is when they talk about the rules. And I mean, maybe it's just like a dumb easy thing to say, but as a horror fan, I just like hearing a horror movie talk about other horror movies and stuff. And I feel like from the franchise as a whole, we never really get as much of that kind of stuff as I want. But I mean, I guess that's like kind of a minor quibble. But I mean, yeah, overall, I really like the characters. I thought the kills were brutal AF, as you would say.
As I would say?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever said that. I've never said that, Tim.
You say stuff like that all the time.
Shut up.
LOL, OMG. The kills I think were especially gnarly and nasty, to the point where there's times I was like kind of like wincing, like, ooh, this is like rough to watch. It feels very visceral and bloody. And yeah, and there's a big part of the movie which I was surprised at how much it affected me. It might be maybe kind of a cheap thing to do, but I don't know, it worked on me. So yeah, overall, I was pretty happy with this one.
Yeah, I don't think I'm quite as positive as you are. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not in here ready to like shit all over it or anything, but I think I'm kind of in a lukewarm place again. Okay. Much like these directors' last film, I don't think I get the praise that this was getting online in January. Like, my Twitter was flooded with people talking about how good it was and being this return to form and how much people wanted another one and really hyping up a lot of the characters. And some of the new characters are solid enough, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not... I think fundamentally on some level I just don't really care about getting new Scream movies, and I don't think anything in this in this film really gave me a reason why I needed it. I just kind of feel like we're going through the motions. Now, don't get me wrong, the positive points would be it kind of remembered to try and be a horror movie again, because even though I kind of like some of Scream 4, one of my biggest complaints about Scream 4 is that it didn't even feel like it was trying to be a horror movie. Like, any scenes where there was like the killer was stalking someone felt like kind of almost like, oh, we have to do this because it's a Scream movie, but we're not really taking any of it seriously. It felt almost borderline a comedy rather than an actual horror film. Whereas this, it does try to actually have some suspenseful moments, where characters are walking around on their own and they're like covering the background and then the door will shut and then maybe the killer's going to be standing there, maybe they're not. There's stuff like that. The kills are a bit more visceral and, like you say, a bit more gory, but there's definitely things in this that I don't think I like very much. I don't think the meta commentary on the Legacy sequel really gives it a pass when it does a lot of the same things. just doing what the other legacy sequels do doesn't make it commentary. It just means you're doing it. The fact that you point out that you're doing it, I don't think adds any depth to it than any other movie. So there's a lot of nostalgia pop things in this that I think are a bit groan-inducing. I also would say that the new main girl, Sam.
Sam Carpenter.
Yes, I did notice the last name is Carpenter. Yes. I think she's kind of weak, especially in a couple of scenes where she has to get emotional. I thought those were particularly bad, and I'll get into a bit more obviously in spoilers when I can talk about them more in detail, but I will say there's a couple of scenes where they kind of rush to an emotion, and I don't know if it's because they were trying to save time, so they were trying to like get a lot of exposition out and a lot of emotion at the same time, but it came off as kind of hokey, and I don't think the actor's performance was necessarily... I mean, not that it was good writing, but I don't think the actor's performance was going to save it any either. And it's not that this is not necessarily shit on the new cast as a whole. I actually think a lot of the side characters are kind of entertaining for what they are, as much as I think it's a little bit, the fact that there's like randy family members who know horror movie rules and stuff like that, it's a bit okay, right? I was ready to complain about someone being related to someone early on, and then it kind of, as the movie went, I was like, okay, so everyone's just somewhat related to someone. Okay, fine. I'll just, I'll let it go, because it's clearly a running gag or theme or whatever, but it's just something I'm kind of rolling my eyes at a little bit. Yeah, I think fundamentally, I kind of come back to this idea of, like what I felt when I went to see Ghostbusters Afterlife, which is it's a movie about remembering how good the first film was, as opposed to actually justifying why itself is worth watching. And I kind of got a lot of that from this. It was a lot of, the original was good, the original was the best, the sequels weren't as good, so we're here to go back to the original again. But ultimately, you're just, you're literally copying the structure of the first film. You're copying set pieces. You're taking locations directly from the first film. The opening scene's very much a play on the Drew Barrymore scene from the first one. Again, there's little twists, there's little swerves and things that make it different, but you're still kind of like calling back to that scene specifically, and then you're calling back to things. I felt like if I actually had something more to say, and maybe something more to offer as a critique, or as just subverting what a legacy sequel actually does. But I don't really feel like it did. I feel like it just kind of followed the beats of a legacy sequel, and it pointed them out as it was doing it, but by the end of the film it still just did them.
Okay, but I mean, how is that like different than the other Scream movies though?
Well, the sequels, it's not, and that's kind of part of the problem. Is that I feel like we've been here, we've done this. There's not really much new on the table here. Be honest, other than the fact that the movies that the younger characters are referencing are newer films. Like characters bring up The Babadook, they bring up It Follows, they bring up Hereditary, right? That's I guess kind of new. The first film's exempt from this because the first film, like, we hadn't seen it yet, and we hadn't seen characters reference horror films, especially killers who were inspired by horror films and were intentionally trying to like do horror movie tropes. That was all very unique on its own. That's what made Scream kind of memorable and fun and kind of witty and meta. And 2 kind of gets a little bit with like poking fun at sequel-y stuff. But the more it's went on, and the more it's tried to do that, we're going to poke fun at a trilogy, or we're going to poke fun at a reboot, now we're going to poke fun at legacy sequels, the more watered down it's become, and the more it's just, hey, here's the things they do, and then we just do them. Yeah, lukewarm on my end. And I probably feel like I'm really shitting on it, and I think it's perfectly watchable. I do think it's a bit overlong though, although this actually goes for a lot of the Scream movies. A lot of them are like nearly 2 hours for some reason. So I'll throw that in the objective critique hat a little bit, but other than that, like, I think it's perfectly watchable, but ultimately it's another franchise movie that I just, and I think part of it as well is that the whodunit of Scream, and what's funny is that we can't get to still spoilers, is that a character even points something I'm about to say out. Part of the problem with Scream is that Ghostface is not a character. Right, we don't have a Jason, we don't have a Michael, we don't have a Freddy. We have a mask that different people put on in the different movies, and obviously a big part of that is because they want Scream to be this who is the killer. They want to tease and go back and forth and really. And I think as the movies have went on, like, I've come to realize that for the most part, the reveals of who the killer is after the first one have all been disappointing. None of them have been that good.
I feel like kind of part of it is the, like, yeah, like the mystery of it. It's never really been, I didn't hate it, but yeah, I would say maybe like that kind of like final bit maybe might have been the weakest part of the movie, once like you kind of get into like the killer's motivations and stuff. Like, there's some interesting stuff there, but it did feel like a little bit out of nowhere. Like, oh, it doesn't really seem like this is matching exactly, you know, what I kind of thought like the thesis of the film was. It didn't bother me like that much, but like I can see that there. But I don't know, I still like the mystery of wondering and thinking about, you know, who it's going to be. You know, I like watching it with my wife or going like, oh, like, do you think it's this person or do you think it's this person? Like, that is like a fun aspect to me.
Yeah, I think part of it is because they poke a lot of jokes where characters kind of start like accusing, not seriously, but they just kind of start saying it could be you that's the killer. And there's usually two of them, so it could be you too. What about you? You could be the killer. There's a lot of that going around in the first half of the movie.
And I always wonder with that, like, how serious they're being, because like if you really thought that person was the killer, like, you wouldn't be like joking about it and like being very casual with that person, you know?
Yeah, like I say, there's a few scenes that I think are stand out in a bad way. So I'll get into those as we work through it in spoilers. And generally speaking, I found myself kind of feeling like I've been here, I've done this, and like some of the kills are alright, but I wasn't super into it. For whatever reason, there's a nice simplicity to a slasher movie, right? Like a normal slasher movie. 90 minutes, if that, right? Ideally. Unless you're Halloween Kills, which was like 2 hours, because screw you. And you know, it's about giving me some witty characters that I can follow and enjoy the time until they get killed off one by one. That's really all I'm there for. And I'm not saying don't be smarter than that, don't be wittier than that or whatever, but I just I feel like the cow being milked dry as I watch these Scream sequels, and it's not been that long since we worked through the franchise, so they're relatively fresh in my head. I think when we worked through them, I'm not too harsh on 2 and 4. I think they're perfectly watchable. I think there's some nice ideas in both of them, but ultimately I don't really need any of the Scream sequels. And this fifth one, I mean, I'll say this about it. I think it sits nicely with 2 and 4. I think you could put it with them. It kind of fills that void. It's nowhere near as bad as Scream 3. It just exists as a Scream sequel if you really wanted that. But I'd rather have a new Friday the 13th. Call me crazy.
I get what you're saying. I don't know, for me though, like I enjoyed the characters. I'm not gonna disagree and say like that, yeah, they were necessarily doing something completely new, or that, yeah, they weren't, falling into, the tropes that they themselves kind of point out and talk about it. Like, I do get it. And
do you know what I think would actually be ballsy, right? I guess this is a slight spoiler in that you know that this doesn't happen, but I mean, Scream 5's a whodunit, right? So this is not a spoiler. If you know it's a whodunit, it's not a spoiler. I think if they made a Scream movie where the killer gets unmasked at the end and no one has a clue who it is, we've not seen them before, and it's just a random person, it's the guy who shot the Waynes, on the alleyway. It's just a random dude named Joe Chill, and it doesn't matter. He's not related to anyone. He's not got some big motive. He's just a psychopath who is not connected to anyone else. That would actually be a ballsy, more interesting reveal to me, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that as well, because, as I'm watching the movie and trying to think of like who it's going to be, like I did kind of have the thought at one point, I was like, oh, like how crazy would it be if it's just like a random person that no one knows who it is. I agree, that would be interesting. There was something that I thought they were going to do halfway through the movie and then didn't, and I kind of thought like, oh, it would be really interesting if they did this, but ended up not doing it.
It really is structured like the first Scream. There's a lot of very similar shots. The way it cuts to like the high school at one point, it starts off with the flag and the camera comes down. It even ends on the same shot as the original Scream, which isn't a spoiler. It's just the camera pulling back as the reporter's talking. And the original it was Gale, But the camera pulls back as there's a reporter talking, there's ambulance vans and stuff, because the exact same shot. They're doing the same stuff. Make something that is yours. I don't know. There's a point where I just feel like I'm watching a fan movie, and it's a professional fan movie with the real people in it, but it still feels like a fan movie. So, yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm coming down harsh on this. I think it's perfectly watchable, and I'm not going to rate it that low, but ultimately I'm going to come down harsh on it because I think it's trying to have its cake and eat it by saying, oh, we're meta commentary on the Legacy sequel. No, but you're still just a goddamn Legacy sequel with all the problems that entails.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, sure.
What are you wearing? No, just
Godzilla t-shirt, jeans. I'd have to check what color my underwear is if you really want to know, but I'm willing to do it.
Maybe later. But I was gonna say, do you think part of the problem might be, and I don't want to try to sound like elitist or something, but but like, I mean, do you think part of it is that, maybe you're like you watch more movies and think about movies more often than maybe like the casual viewer, or like the more casual horror fan, because for some people like we watch movies and we talk about them like usually like every week, and so we have like longer conversations than maybe most people that just watch something and are like, oh hey, that was neat or whatever. So do you think that might be part of the issue, where like maybe a casual person is just watching this, and as they're pointing out these tropes and stuff, they're like, oh yeah, that is a thing, I guess I never really thought about it, but they do that in a lot of movies, and like, oh hey, they're referencing some movies I never heard of or something. Like I don't know if that maybe might affect it more for you or not.
I mean, I think that's a really broad idea, really, but I think there's some truth to it in general. The idea that you talk more about movies, you think more about movies, you appreciate the good things more, but you also start to really get irritated by the bad things more as well, because you notice them. You notice when they're taking shortcuts. You notice when they're just copying each other, or they're doing something that's a shortcut. And I think the effect it has on everyone is not something that is immediately apparent. I think it's something that people who think about movies recognize it in the moment. And I'm not, in a sense, I can put myself above other people here. I'm not. I just mean, in general, I think people who are thinking about it a bit more and are recognizing certain things have a reason to explain something that, even if someone sees a movie like this and they go, oh, I loved that, it was great, there was all these references to the original, I felt nostalgia and all those things, and maybe they'll still genuinely like it and they'll rewatch it and stuff. But I think the real test is that when you look at things 10, 15, 20 years later and you go, okay, what movies are people still talking about? What movies are still being referenced as great classics and stuff? And Scream will be referenced. I don't think Scream 2022 is going to be brought up much unless you're in a horror group specifically who are talking about long-running franchises. I don't think there's going to be much of an impact from this, and I think that's a sort of a broad thing that's true about a lot of franchises and stuff, where, I mean, sure, right now we're talking about these new Halloween movies because we're right in the middle of the trilogy coming out, and there's the last one still to come, but in 15-20 years time, are people going to be talking about that as much as the original? I doubt it. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Because it's great and the new ones are not.
People may like jokingly say like evil dies tonight or something.
Yeah.
The way someone will make fun of Busta Rhymes kicking Michael Myers, but yeah, like no one is gonna be actually actively thinking about it and watching it, so that's an interesting thing to say. I'm not trying to say that that's an excuse for the movie that was like, well, you didn't like it because you're too smart or something, but I was just curious if
I'll accept that as a statement though, if you want to give me that.
I don't. But I mean, I just thought that was maybe just an interesting point to bring up.
Yeah, it's tough, but I mean, it's the same thing with all these movies, right? Like Jurassic World did really well, Star Wars The Force Awakens did very well, Terminator Dark Fate, not so much, but that was clearly following the template. Halloween 2018 did well relatively for a horror movie, so
I mean, maybe this is being a little generous, but I feel like most franchises get to do this like once. Like I mean, I hate to say it, but like I really did like fall in with when I saw The Force Awakens, because like I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and this movies meant a lot to me growing up. Like, I mean, it's not anything unusual. It's a lot of people that had the same feeling. But even though when I look back at Force Awakens now, I see more of the flaws, and I go like, oh yeah, it is just very heavy on nostalgia and just redoing a lot of like the beats from the original trilogy and stuff, but it still like worked on me. But then like anytime they had any of the other movies after that, it was definitely more and more diminishing returns. So I don't know, I did like this movie quite a bit. I'm not gonna try to backpedal and say, oh maybe you're right, I agree, but because I actually do think I had a lot of fun with it. It did work for me, even though I'm not necessarily disagreeing with some of the points he brought up. But yeah, with the sequel and stuff, I can't imagine them getting away if they're doing maybe some similar tropes or something like in the next one, which in a way does kind of make me excited to see, what we're gonna get out of that. Is there gonna be like some type of overarching statement or thesis they try to make? Because at that point, what is the trend or the big thing that you can really talk about, or is it just gonna try to do its own thing and just fall back on just doing more classic slasher stuff? I don't know, but I'm kind of interested either way though.
Yeah, I don't know what you do with the next one, because you can't do it's the requel like meta commentary again. Yeah. So what do you do for the next one exactly? Is there a like, this is the meta commentary of number 6s in franchises. Number 6 always does this.
So I was just thinking, like what is like the trope of a 6 movie?
I mean, it varies wildly. I mean, people love Jason Lives, but I mean, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, not so much. Like, there's a very wide, gamut of quality between various part 6s. So
I know like they would never do it, and if they did, people would hate it, but I'd be really interested if they just did something that's like just super over the top wacky, like go to space or like something like that. That's like
yeah, just take the same cast and do the original story again, but they're all on a space station.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds more fun to me than what they're because that's the other thing, they're tied to Woodsboro, and that's not necessarily the worst thing. Like, I mean, Jason was tied to Crystal Lake for a long time. Freddy's tied to Elm Street, but there's something about like this town has had so many like serial killings.
The thing is, it's like it's not just that it's had so many serial killings, but it's had like very specific serial killings that have like all like been very like closely related to each other. Which...
Yeah, they keep. I mean, to be fair, 2 and 3 weren't in Woodsboro. 2 because it followed Sydney to college, and then it was in Hollywood or whatever. But like 1, 4, and 5 now, though, like each new set of killings is linked directly to the last ones, or the original one at least. So it's kind of weird, but it's kind of odd. Like, I feel like Scream 4 is a bit of an outlier in this now, because I feel like, with the exception of the fact that the deputy lady from the 4th one is in this, I feel like you could skip Scream 4 and it would probably work better than, like, Scream 5 would probably work better if Scream 4 never existed. The fact that Scream 4 had like copycat killers who were this young hip generation who were trying to like make their new version of Scream or the new version of Stab or whatever, it kind of dilutes the fact that we have characters in this kind of, we're going back to the original again, without getting spoilery.
I agree with that. As much as I do like 4, I'm a pretty big fan of that. Like I don't know if we did rankings, but like previously, like 4 was my second favorite entry. So I liked 4 quite a bit, but I do agree it does take a bit away from this, because even if you are getting in the weeds and say, well, 4 is tackling reboots and then this one is more tackling requels, I get that, distinction, but they're very closely related. Like, it's I don't know, but I don't know. I do like 4 though. I don't want to. Yeah, it does feel like something that like could potentially be forgotten by people because it's like the first trilogy. They were each one like was just like a couple of years away from each other. I think, and then the fourth one was just one of those kind of outliers that I don't know the exact time frame, but it was like a later on sequel, and then it was just a standalone movie. It didn't get its own like trilogy or whatever, and then if this one is popular and ends up getting a few sequels or a trilogy or something, like it feels like you'll have like an original trilogy, then this kind of new group, and then 4 will just be like this weird kind of thing stranded in the middle.
Yeah.
I think I heard or saw someone say something about how there's an Easter egg in this one that talks about Kirby from the 4th movie. But I missed out on it. I saw something saying like, oh, like Easter egg confirms Kirby from Scream 4 is alive, because a lot of people really like that character. But yeah, I did too. I'm not hating on her or anything, but whatever that Easter egg or whatever is, I missed it.
So spoilers then. Full spoilers for Scream 5 from this point on. You have been warned. We'll dive through this thing. Of course, it opens with a traditional Drew Barrymore style scene. We have teenage girl alone in the house. The phone rings. There's kind of a little bit of a gag. Well, not a gag, but there's this idea that she's on her like smartphone like constantly and is like moaning over text that the landline keeps ringing.
I felt it.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a modern twist on things.
Yeah, we literally unplugged our landline because we kept getting like telemarketing calls and we never used it otherwise. So we're just like, why do we have this thing? I just unplugged it.
The killer pretends to be someone her mother knows, right? Someone, and she even texts her friend saying, oh, I think I'm talking to my mom's new boyfriend or something. So it's like, okay, it gives her a reason to want to stay in the line with him and sort of be nosy and ask him some questions,
Yeah, he was pretending to be someone from like, he said he was like from his mom's group, and then she was kind of intrigued. She was like, oh, like, wait, what kind of group is this? Like AA? What are we talking about here?
It was Tara, because I text Tara and said, have you ever wanted to hear your name in the Scream voice? Because there's plenty of it in the new Scream movie.
And one thing that I do think is kind of interesting is, like you said, there isn't like a specific ghost face that comes back in each movie, but we do kind of get it in the voice, the ghost face voice that like always comes back, which is kind of cool.
That's true. Does that mean we can only keep making these until he dies and then we have to stop?
Maybe.
Not that I think he's like super old or anything, or he's not got much time left. I'm just saying that's the cutoff, because once you don't have him, what's the point? You can't do the voice anymore.
Yeah. To be honest, I think it took me a while to even realize that it was just someone's voice. Like, I think I assumed that they were just putting it through some type of like I don't know, machine or something, and be like, oh no, it's just like that's just the way like some dude talks. I actually like this opening quite a bit with them on the phone, because again, it's it's playing with your expectations. So obviously anyone that knows the Scream franchise, as soon as the phone rings and they pick it up and you hear that voice, you know what's coming. And I like the idea, or I like that they toy with you for a bit and kind of drag it out, and then I actually thought it was really good, like when he makes that turn, and there's like a second where it goes from like, oh, I'm this friendly guy, and then it goes boom into like the sinister kind of ghost face mode, and I don't know, that worked for me. I liked it.
Yeah, he threatens her friend that she thinks she's texting, but really, it's him who's cloned the phone. Although,
phone clones.
Not really. I mean, we're in spoilers.
Oh, sure.
Because the friend turns out to be one of the killers, so it probably is just her phone.
Yeah.
They have to be cloned.
Yeah. Which, like, not to pat myself on the back or anything, but like she was pretty quick on my like list of suspects. I was like, I think it's her.
I'm not gonna lie, her being one of the killers was a lot like I remember the character name, but from Scream 2, the one who's not the mother.
Mickey?
Mickey, there you go. That sounds right. You know, the one who feels kind of like, and even less so in this one, feels like a character who, because I think I agree with you about like not seeing the kids all hang out a bit more, but I think my complaint's more about the fact that it felt like after the third way mark, we don't see them together again until the party towards the end, and it kind of felt like I don't feel like we've spent as much time with these characters to like care that any of them are going to start getting killed quite quickly now.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a nitpick.
And I think my big problem was with that is that I generally liked the characters, so I wanted to get more of them.
That's
like
fair.
I don't know, when they are having their banter and stuff. Like I don't know, I thought I liked it, especially Mindy. I thought especially stood out to me, which maybe not like as much early on, but definitely like her stuff like at the party. I liked a lot. That was really fun.
No, Mindy's good. To be honest, I didn't necessarily need it to be the niece of Randy. That was a bit of like a whatever connection, but and then because I didn't realize that her and the other guy were brother and sister, because it wasn't until they're at their house and they said, "Oh, this is Randy's our uncle," and then we actually see the mum, or so Randy's sister from Scream 3 has a cameo as their mother in this. I was like, geez, you're bringing everyone back. that other actor who's in tons of movies, including horror movie wise, he's in The Open House, but he's like one of the teenagers.
Oh, the like kid with like the blonde highlight hair. Yeah.
And he's the son of Deputy Lady from Scream 4, who's now the sheriff. Right. So yeah, we've got these characters, but like. I like Jenny Ortega, who plays Tara. I like, and honestly, the most surprising thing this movie did to me, the biggest swerve it gave me, is that she survives the opening kill scene. Seeing the very next scene where they say, "Oh, she's out of the hospital, she's been stabbed 7 times or whatever, but she's going to be okay." That was legitimately the most shocking thing this movie did. It was like, "Oh, she's not dead."
Yeah.
Did the killer mean not to kill her? Or like, is this all part of the plan? The big Scream plan? I don't know. Yeah. But that was honestly the most interesting thing about the whole movie to me, is that she survived. I was like, what? But that doesn't happen. They die in the opening scene.
No, that's true. Yeah.
I was like, oh, maybe they are really going to do something like wild by the time we get to the end of this. And let's be honest, the wild thing they do is they kill off one of the original characters. That's it. That's what they've got. That's all they've got up their sleeve. Let's be honest. And it was so predictable as well. There's a scene where I knew it was going to happen. This is one of the scenes in the movie. I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but this is one of the scenes in the movie that I thought was just bad from a writing perspective, because it felt the need to like rush into like an emotional beat that it didn't quite earn. And it's the scene where Gail shows up and she immediately sees Dewey, because they've split up now. She's doing like morning TV stuff and he's retired and living in like a trailer or something.
Yeah, he's like retired. He's like kind of I don't think they really maybe go into too many details, but it seems like he's kind of like the town drunk or whatever.
Yeah, so she shows up and she has a big entrance and she is mad at him because he texted her, by the way, Ghostface is back in town, lol. But he immediately like ends up opening up about the night he left her, because he couldn't like hack like living in New York with her or whatever, and that's how they ended up splitting up. And they have this emotional sort of reconciliation in their very first scene together. I'm like, this is the first time you've been on camera together and you're having this emotional thing. And then I went, oh, he's definitely dying then. The reason why this is happening so quickly in one scene is because one of them's going to die. Probably Dewey. I did like that they brought the Broken Arrow music back for him, though. I did kind of pop for that. Okay, you don't know what I'm talking about. I'm sure I explained this when we did Scream 2. So in
Probably,
Scream,
yeah.
So in Scream 2, he's got this like guitar theme. It's like down, 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 down. Right? That's the Broken Arrow soundtrack. That's from the Hans Zimmer score from the movie Broken Arrow, which they use as a temp track in Scream 2, and they fell in love with it so much that they decided to pay for it instead of just writing new music. They wanted to use that track. So they actually used a little bit of it here. It was a re-recording of it, but it was it was when he showed up, because at first he says, no, I'm not coming to help you, but then he shows up at the place anyway, and it's like down, 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 down. I was like, Dewey the hero's here. He's going to die. Mostly out of stupidity as well, might I add, but we'll get to that.
I I disagree. But well, I mean, is it stupid what he does? Yeah, but I feel like I've seen other people say similar stuff. But like, I don't know. I get what he's doing though, where he's coming from. I don't know. I guess we'll talk about it more.
We'll get to it. So offensive to me. Clearly emotionally hit you, and you feel attacked. You feel like I've slighted you by calling him out for this.
Just let people enjoy things, God.
Well, no, because that's how we end up with Roland Emmerich and Michael Bay movies, Timmy. All right.
Yeah, but no one's enjoying those.
So we're introduced to Sam, who is Tara's sister. She's the older sister. She's living out of town. She's dating Jack Quaid from The Boys and other things. He's the boyfriend. She finds out her sister's been attacked, and they go back to town. And honestly, there's a really weird moment when they're driving back to Woodsboro, and they're cracking some jokes about Friday the 13th, and he confesses he's never seen Stab, and he's like, wait, we're volunteering to come back to this town where all these murders keep happening? This seems like a bad idea. There's an awkward line where he says something to the effect of, do you have any reason why your sister specifically might have been targeted by a new Ghostface? And the reason why it's there is because it turns out there's a connection from Sam to previous stuff, which is revealed in the most... Okay, can we talk about shitty CG de-aged Billy? Oh my god, Skeet Ulrich, or whatever you say his name.
Ulrich, I think.
Ulrich, okay. Skeet Ulrich. Billy Loomis from the first movie is back in this movie because Sam sees visions of Billy talking to her, and he's standing there in the white t-shirt with the blood stains on it from the end of the first movie. But obviously his face is like really shit because it's CG. Like, it's fine when he's still holding still, but as soon as he starts talking, now obviously the voice sounds good because they've got, you know, him doing the voice, so he sounds, you know, like him. He sounds fine. If anything, I'm actually impressed he sounds so close. Like, because normally when it's like 20 years later, they sound a bit different. You know, you can hear the difference. I actually thought he sounded quite the same. Yeah. So, for credit where credit's due.
It's weird because I also just randomly watched As Good As It Gets, which he's in as well.
Oh, so really?
It was weird to just kind of see him, and like it was around the same time that he did Scream. I don't think they're too far off in years. So you know, he looks pretty similar in that. So it's just kind of weird that I was like, oh, hey, I feel like I just saw him.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I like that movie.
Yeah. So here's the thing that I'm kind of having trouble with, and I know you already kind of laid your cards on the table, so I know where you're gonna stand with it. So I hated this at first, and then by the end of the movie, I was kind of like, oh, you know what, this. You know, okay, so if we are, you know, if a big thing of this is like looking at these legacy, nostalgia, requel movies, whatever you want to call it, okay, if that's what we're doing, and this is just like a dumb plot device to bring it back, and even if, you know, you want to try to say like, oh yeah, even part of it is kind of having bad CGI, the way, you know, they'll bring like a character back and de-age them, and it looks weird and off-putting and stuff, like, I didn't like it at first, and then by the end I was like, okay, well, I guess if this is another thing that they're trying to kind of point at and have it be part of their meta narrative, I was like, I don't know if I you know, go to like it or anything, but at least I'm like, okay, if that's why it's there, I get it. It doesn't bother me as much, but I mean, I'm assuming that you're gonna say like, oh well, that doesn't justify, you know, having it, but.
It doesn't. I mean, well, if it had like a purpose, like it, it has a big dramatic moment at the end where it's sort of, she's like, oh, I can stab the shit out of the villain. She has a line where she's like, oh, never F with a serial killer's daughter, and then like, you know, Billy's Force Ghost is smiling sadistically as she stabs the killer repeatedly. I felt like if it actually made a point where she kind of acknowledged that he was shit looking or something, like maybe if it actually. Where if the arc of the movie was her getting over like her seeing her dead serial killer father, because the movie kind of hints that she has some mental health issues. She's taking these pills, right. She's getting these visions of her dead dad. I thought it was going to do more with that, and maybe that's something they can play with the sequel. Maybe they're building up. Maybe in the third movie in this trilogy, she's going to be the killer because she's been building up to being a killer like throughout the movies or something. I don't know, but because she stabs the killer a lot at the end. Like she stabs him a bunch.
That was kind of my take on it too. Is like, yeah, at the end when she kind of like looks at him and sees him in the mirror, it does almost seem like to be implying like I'm a part of you, like let your inner serial killer out and then unleash like, you know, the fury, because it does feel extremely like, you know, aggressive and everything.
And he looked very proud. He's like, that's my girl. that was the vibe I was getting from him. If it had more of a purpose, where if the arc of the movie was her getting over the fact that she's seeing this dead dad and she's sort of like becoming more healthy as a result, like maybe if like the last time she saw him, she maybe commented on the fact that he looks like a shitty de-age. I mean, nothing too fourth wall breaking necessarily as that, but have some sort of point where it's poking at the idea of de-aging someone, but it's not really poking fun at it. It's just kind of doing it. You know,
right.
We've got an excuse to see young Billy so we can hear him talk, so we can have his presence in the movie without ever really making a point where she says, no, I have to let go of you. Because that's the thing. If the movie's purpose was to sort of be because this is the thing. This is why Cabin in the Woods is better than even the original Scream. Because Cabin in the Woods is actually got a statement. It's actually saying we need to let go of all these things. We have to stop just doing the same things over and over again. And there's some subgenres and stuff where I'm happy to just keep getting more of them, whatever. Like, so it's a bit more broad than I would say maybe put it. If Scream 5 had this like message of saying, no, we have to let go of the past. We have to like sort of jettison anything connected to this old shit because we have to just move on with our lives. We have to move on with cinema. And if it had some sort of statement, right? If it had a statement that reflected that and it used the tools like Dead Billy that she's seeing or like the other things that it's doing from other legacy sequels, then I would be okay with it because then it'd be tools that are being used to say something. But I don't think it is saying anything particularly notable. Which is the frustrating part, is I can see how you could use it. I can see how you use it and say, this is us saying we have to move on. That's what the movie's about. But I don't think it really is that.
Well, maybe you should tweet at the directors, see if they can maybe get you in that boardroom for the sequel.
Because instead, like, because I think you can sort of view it the way Sydney gets sort of brought in. Because at first Sydney's staying away, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm not coming to Woods, bro." Until Dewey dies, and then she comes rushing to see Gail, and like, yeah, like, okay, we have to deal with this. And her whole attitude when she's talking to the new lead, Sam, is like, "No, you can't run from this." Because again, I actually like Sam. Like, I didn't like that character very much because I thought she was one of the weaker actors in the movie, and her character was like kind of forcibly written in places, but. One of the most interesting things she says in the whole movie is like, you know what, we're going to do what they never do in the movies. We're just going to leave. We're going to leave the town right now and just go. And I was almost disappointed that it. I mean, I know the killers are behind it and they want to like railroad her into a location and whatever, but I just like. That's actually more interesting. Like, have her leave and have the killer or killers have to deal with the fact that she's fleeing. And what do they do in this situation? Because this isn't like a slasher movie where they're trapped in a location like a camp or up in the mountain or something. Like, this is a town full of vehicles. They can leave anytime they want.
Right.
So, you know, you can raise the question, but then you kind of cop out from doing anything with it. I guess is disappointing. But anyway, but Sydney's whole thing is that she keeps saying like, you can't run from it. Trust me, I've tried. You have to face it. You're a part of this now. You're this main character in this slasher movie. You have to do this thing. And the attitude you get from her is like, yeah, you know, it keeps happening to me. It's happened to me 4 times. This is kind of the 5th, although it's not aimed at me directly. Basically, toughen up because it's probably going to happen again. You're probably going to have another sequel. You're probably going to have 2 more sequels. You're going to be the lead character in more films. You're going to have to deal with this shit. So accept it and just get tough and
get good.
So I guess what I'm saying is that instead of having a statement about cinema and horror movies having to move forward and letting go of the past. It instead says, no, brace yourself because we're going to have sequels forever, so just accept it and toughen up. That's ultimately what it's saying, I think. That's what I'm getting from it.
It's an interesting take. I guess I wasn't thinking about that watching the movie necessarily, but I see what you're saying.
I mean, I'm arriving at that with some thought now. I wasn't necessarily thinking it as I was watching it, but that's kind of like how I'm expressing how it made me feel now.
And you gotta move on with cinema.
Move on with cinema.
From Halloween, is Loomis's first name Sam in that one?
Yeah, Sam Loomis, yeah, that's right.
Okay. Because that's kind of interesting, because then you have Sam Carpenter, which obviously is like a nod to Carpenter, but if she's a Loomis, if she had his name, she would be Sam Loomis. So that's interesting.
I mean, it's an intentional wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that. I mean, there's a character named Wes in it.
There is, yeah. There's a character named Wes. Yeah, blonde highlights guy. His name is Wes. I guess, yeah, rather than go through an order, I guess we'll just tackle the big things and we'll slide into the various things we have to talk about. So, I mean, we brought up Dewey's Dead. We should talk about Dewey's Dead. So, a surprising amount of this movie takes place at the hospital because they keep going back to visit Tara, who's in hospital. And when another big killing happens, which we'll go back and talk about, they realise that there's no police at the hospital, so Sam rushes with Dewey to the hospital. And sure enough, the killer's coming after Tara, and Tara, bless her, is trying to like wheel away, but she's not meant to be moving on her own yet, so she's like wheeling very slowly because it hurts too much. But the killer's there, coming after her. Jack Quaid, what's his name? Richie. He shows up.
I forget if it was this part, but I think at some point he's like watching like stab movies and like YouTube videos about them.
Yeah, that was earlier. Yeah, he was sitting on his phone watching Stab on Netflix.
And I do think it's kind of like funny when they're talking about how like, the Stab movies has a lot more sequels than the actual like Scream movies. So at some point they would have just gone off the rails. And then like when you see clips of it in this movie, it has like Ghostface with like a flamethrower.
Yeah,
so,
and it's like
which I thought was kind of funny.
It's like a chrome mask as well. He's got like a chrome Ghostface mask. That movie looks more interesting than this, to be honest. Let me watch the chrome Ghostface with the flamethrower.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure it's entertaining.
And what I thought was interesting, because obviously Richie turns out to be the other killer, right? And
right,
that's like poked at immediately, because like when they go to see Dewey because they want to help from like an original, Dewey's like, how long have you known this guy? Never trust the love interest. The love interest is always like worth eyeing up. And I thought it was interesting here, he gets his arm sliced, and I think it's the exact same like place that the love interest in the second stream gets slashed. And
interesting.
I don't know if that's like an intentional like, red herring, like, because he turned out not to be a killer, so it's meant to be like something that links in your head and go, oh, he won't be a killer either because he's getting slashed by the killer. And in Stream 2, some of the characters theorize that could have been staged and it's not that serious a cut. Whereas here it actually is staged.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. But
that's glad,
yeah. So he's on the phone to Sam, who calls as he's stalking Tara, because one of Tara's injuries is she got like her ankle broken in the opening scene, so she's got like a cast on.
Yeah, that was like super brutal.
Yeah, and she's crawling along the hallway. There's no one at this hospital apparently. It's like Halloween 2's hospital.
Well, they at one point they mention because like there was an attack in the hospital earlier, so they say that they transfer her to a private wing.
Okay, sure. I'll accept it.
So yeah, I mean, I thought it was a little weird at first, but I was like, okay, whatever. Like that's enough movie logic for me.
Yeah, but she's crawling on the floor. Killer's on the phone to Sam. They have this badass moment where she's like, oh, I'm just stalling for time, asshole. And then the elevator doors open and Dewey and Sam are already in the elevator, and Dewey shoots the killer a couple times. Presumably she's wearing a vest. And that's so the two things here, right, that I have an issue with is, number one, he shoots her multiple times. He gets closer, they struggle a little bit, and then Dewey shoots her like 3 times in the chest, and the killer goes flying back into some shelves and like is sitting there as if maybe dead. And obviously it's a horror movie, it's a Scream movie, we know she's not. I thought immediately as soon as she landed, just run up and pull the mask off right now, right? Like, how many times have you done this? You're supposed to be smart characters who have thought this through multiple times. And Dewey, you've been in this situation multiple times. Just run up and pull the mask off right now. And then it got even more frustrating and dumb when he goes over at the elevator with the character, says, "You took it out of here, I'm going back." They always come back, you gotta shoot them in the head. And I'm like, yeah, but now you've given them enough time to like wake up and recuperate and be prepared and whatever. And actually that's the other problem with this, is that before, when he was struggling with the killer, once we know who the killer is and who it has to be in this scene, because Richie's also in this scene, like be playing innocent, he's struggling with a teenage girl. You don't see the problem with this? You know, this like small teenage girl and Dewey, who admittedly David Arquette's not like a hulking big dude or anything, but like he's struggling with her like pretty severely before he shoots her.
I mean, at some point, I mean, however you want to engage with the movie is fine. I think at some point, like, you got to understand that it is a movie. Like, it's not the real world. Like, I don't like the killers in every Scream movie have always like way like stronger than they should be and like survive things that they shouldn't, so I don't know. I think that's just like overthinking it too much, but
I don't know. It was
whatever.
It was just it was as soon as they revealed the killers, and I thought back to, because there's a lot of scenes where the killer's there and Richie's also there, so it has to be the teenage girl. It has to be Amber.
So you think she's like a Mary Sue or something? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that. Although they do talk about that phrase in the film, they bring it up. Yeah, I just, it was the first thing I thought of when I was like, wait, that had to be her. And Dewey was like struggling to like fight her off in like a test of strength. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, no, I get it, but yeah, at the same time, I just think there has to be a level of.
There should have been a mid-credit scene where she's at a gym, like pushing weights and stuff.
Iron.
Yeah, pumping iron, just to explain that she's been working out. She's really tough for her size and age, and that's why Dewey was a little bitch.
Okay. Yeah. No. I feel like I've seen or heard people say like, oh yeah, it's like a little emotionally manipulative and stuff, but I don't know, this scene worked for me, and I was especially surprised because again, coming at this, and I like the Scream movies, but or at least I usually don't think that I have as like much of an attachment to them or whatever, but I was surprised at how much this affected me. Like I was like genuinely sad to see him go, and the smart thing to do would have been to stay in the elevator or whatever, but I like that he got to have a little hero's moment, and I do think like part of him felt like, yeah, there's a chance I'm not going to come back from this because of just knowing how these movies and stuff work, but still I'm going to sacrifice myself for the chance that if this person's going to come back, that maybe I can put a stop to that and help people out. So I don't know, it worked for me, even if you want to say that it is purposely just trying to pull in your heartstrings or play with that trope of sacrificing the old character or whatever they see in other movies. But I don't know. What can I say? It worked on me.
So, to be fair, I've not said any of that. This is all stuff you've read online. You said that as if I was accusing you of that or complaining about that, and I've not said anything of the sort.
Well, I mean, I feel like that's what you were kind of leading up to, because it seemed like you didn't like it, but
I didn't really care that much. I was a little indifferent to it. If anything, I just kind of feel like I saw it coming, and it's about time they probably killed one of the characters from the original off, because they went a long time, because they felt untouchable in the last like couple of movies. Like there was nothing.
True.
There was no chance of any of them being killed in 4. And when I went into 4, I was expecting something ballsier. I spoke at length about the ballsy ending I thought it might have, and then it kind of copped out. But I thought they'd at least be ballsy enough to kill off one of the original cast members. So it's interesting that it took another decade before someone had the balls to actually kill off one of the trio. And maybe it was a condition. Maybe David Arquette said, "I'm only coming back if you kill me off, because I'm not doing it anymore."
And it's it's kind of funny, because originally he was supposed to die in the first movie, but he was such like a fan favorite that they brought him back in the second one. So kind of interesting that he's the sacrificial lamb in this one. But I mean,
but you knew he was alive at the end of the first one, though.
But like initially though, his character was supposed to die Like he wasn't supposed
Oh,
to
I can
survive.
believe that, but it wasn't just a decision for the sequel because they clearly made that choice because you see him on the stretcher at the end of the first movie.
I get
Yeah.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because the big things is that once they start talking about everything that's going on, and because this is the thing, the first time we see Sam see Billy in her head, she's immediately attacked by the killer who calls her in the hospital. And it was the way it was done was so quick, and then the way the killer vanished was so quick, and no one else saw him, that I thought they were going to play with the idea that she imagined that as well. And
I thought that too.
Yeah, and I thought there was going to be more of that, but then it never came back round. It never came up again. So I was like, oh, I guess that wasn't that. It just felt weirdly filmed. Because I genuinely thought that was in her head, and the reveal at the end might be that she is crazy and she doesn't realize that she is the killer. Or something like that. I thought it might do something wild like that, which would have been more interesting, I think, than
yeah, that would definitely, it would have been something.
I guess it comes back to like when someone's when Sydney's like going through the house at the end with the gun, and the killer yells out, "Yeah, but which where's the other killer though?" It's like, oh, there's two killers. I've seen that movie, and I'm like, you making a quip about it doesn't change the fact that yes, yet again we're doing the exact same thing with two killers. Bizarrely, the worst movie in the franchise is the only one that shook that trend.
That's true.
Oh dear. Anyway, once they realise they're in deep shit, Sam has the idea to go and find Dewey and ask for help. He explains some rules. What I thought was interesting is he numbers them, but the 3 rules he gives are not the 3 rules that Randy gave in the original. I mean, they're just as valid, but they're very different rules. Right about this time, though, I think it's before they go see Dewey, because you go a while before you see the original cast. You go a good half hour, I'd say, before you see any of them. The worst scene in the movie is the scene where Sam says, "Tara, we have to talk one-on-one. I need to confess something. Do you remember when Dad left?" It's like, no, I was like 8. What happened? It's like, and she has this emotional scene where she tells her that when Sam was 13, and presumably that was when Tara was 8. Oh, I was looking through old diaries Mum had in the attic or whatever, and I found out that I'm not Dad's daughter. I was a bastard child of Billy Loomis. I'm the serial killer from the first movie's child. They get really upset at each other, and she tells her to go away because she can't take all this emotion. I honestly thought the performance here from Sam's actress was kind of rough. But admittedly, the script's doing her no favors because the script is like shoehorning in so much exposition into also a very emotional scene, and it felt really piled on to me. And I was sitting there thinking, this is a terrible scene. Like, this is just bad. And it's nothing else in the movie comes close to this scene in terms of quality, so I mean that's a good thing, I suppose, but this one stuck out as being a really bad scene to me.
It didn't really bother me, to be honest. It feels very like soap opera-y, but I mean that's a lot of the series is that, though. I feel like I feel like there's always been these kind of like big, like crazy revelations that characters will have. And
well, Tara is watching Dawson's Creek at one point, which
that's true, yeah.
is created by Kevin Williamson, who wrote the original Scream movies. So there's a
very true
a reason for that link there. Beyond just here's a TV show that was popular when the first movies were coming out.
Yeah.
Well, more nostalgia, please, everyone. Thank you. We could talk about the other kill scenes that happen earlier on. There's an actor who Kyle Gallner right? Who he's one of those actors who's popped up in a bunch of different things that I've seen. He's played a teenager in a lot of different things.
Was he the guy from the Nightmare remake?
Yes, that's him. Yeah, he's in the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, which notably the last Scream movie threw under the bus as being.
That's right. Yeah. Which rightfully so.
Rightfully so, of course, yes. But yeah, he was in episodes of Smallville. He was also episodes of The Shield as well, admittedly, which is actually a good show.
Oh,
he was in Jennifer's Body, so yeah, and a lot of things.
Yeah.
And the 2008
horror royalty is what you're saying.
In the 2008 to 2012 kind of period, he was in a lot of notable things, and then he's been in a lot of TV shows and stuff since then. But anyway, the point I was getting at though is that he is kind of this random extra kill early on, just so we can have another kill. And just to give them another example of someone who's connected, because it turns out he's actually the nephew of Matthew Lillard's character from the first movie,
Stu.
Yeah, but he's just someone he had like a fling with one of the teenage girls last summer. He's like kind of stalking her, and then the killer just kills him.
His character feels very like, I don't know, just very throwaway, which it's kind of a shame because like he seems like such a scumbag, but like I don't know, just like the look of him like felt really over the top. So like I kind of wanted more of his character because he seemed like he would have been like a good like annoying douchebag, but yeah, I don't really get much. But I mean, I was whatever. It was a decent enough kill.
The next big one is probably the 1-2 punch of Judy and her son Wes. So this, I mean, I like this section because it was a very devoted section to building up to the two kills. They're both at home, and she leaves because she's going to pick up their dinner. They're getting some sushi, and she's going to go pick it up. And she's in the car, and the killer calls her and starts like harassing, and she's like, trace this call to like whoever in the police force. But then it's like, hey, like, I'm going to kill your son. Your son's like all alone. And there's kind of like a running gag, and it's not even that much of a running gag. It's like mentioned twice, but she's like really protective and makes her son carry like a taser and like pepper spray and like other self-defense items. Everything except just like handing him a shotgun and saying, walk around that on your back. There's a lot of like jokes with him. He's in the shower, so he says, have you ever seen Psycho? And things like that. But there's a lot
which famously had a shower scene.
I think that's what he was getting at. Yeah. That's what he was hitting at. So there's a lot of like him walking around as he's like preparing like the table for their dinner and stuff, and there's, you know, he opens the cupboard door and the music ramps up as if the killer's going to be standing there when he shuts the door, but then he's not. And then same with the fridge door, and then he's not. And the big surprise is that the mum gets killed first, because when she runs up to the front door, the killer just jumps out and stabs her, broad daylight. But then we continue following the son around the house until the killer eventually pops out. I would probably describe his kill as the most brutal of the movie, which is he gets stabbed in the neck, but it's kind of this slow, like, because he's kind of struggling against it, and I thought he was maybe going to, because he's like only just at arm's reach for the taser, so you're thinking, oh, maybe he'll get to the taser, but the knife's coming in slowly to his neck, and you see it just slowly pierce his neck. But the part that makes it really gnarly and stand out amongst, you know, horror movie kills is that it's at a bit of an angle, so it keeps pushing until you see it pop out the side of his neck. So it's at this awkward kind of degree, and it's just, you know, I enjoyed the raw brutality, if you will, of the kill.
Oh yeah, definitely. This whole section I really enjoyed quite a bit. All the fake out stuff worked for me. Like it's doing all the things you expect it to do to kind of build up to like a jump scare, and then, you know, I like that they were willing to really play with it. Like, you know, I feel like, you know, they faked you out like at least like 2 or 3 times. And then I was genuinely surprised when, you know, Judy like comes home and runs up the stairs and is just attacked like in broad daylight on someone's porch. And like, it's one of those things where, like, you know, you think middle of the day, like suburban street, being safe and stuff, and just I like the idea of being like, no, like, I'm gonna kill you in broad daylight. And then you know when he comes for Wes himself, and then just how really brutal and vicious it is. And then like I feel like there's a lot of like stabbing trauma in this movie that like really like made me like wince and like grit my teeth, like, ugh. Like I think earlier on, I think it was the first attack, like, you know, someone like gets like stabbed like right through the palm of their hand.
I think it's the first one. Yeah,
like a lot of that stuff was doing it for me. I liked how like gnarly and grisly it was.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how the first movie, like, notably had to be trimmed a little bit to get an R rating back in 1996, and now this is like, if you've ever seen like the uncut version of Scream, which I believe was only ever really released in Japan, I think, you know, there's not much more to it, but I'm pretty sure this movie, like the stuff in this movie, completely outdoes it in every way. It's like the times have changed. You can do this now. I think what I like about it, it's just the suspense. I like the gory ending, obviously, but the suspense of it, it really feels like no, we're going to. It doesn't. The rest of the bollocks of the movie doesn't matter. This like 5 or so minutes like section is just about building up to a kill. So it's just going to be suspense, and we're just going to play with it. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed, it made me look behind him. It made me look down the hallway behind him. It made me consider where he might jump in from. So it was fun. It was a fun slasher movie style scene. It's after this where Gale shows up and Dewey and that go off to the hospital. Dewey dies. After all this, Sam's like, yeah, let's just leave. But Tara has an inhaler she needs. She's got a spare her friend. Amber, thank you. Amber's house, which honestly, like it was in the trailer, so I knew it was definitely going to be the house. But even the way, like at first I thought, I might have thought they were just trying to mimic that house from the end of the original film, because like they've got the couches kind of laid out the same way facing the TV. But then of course when Sydney and Gale, who put a tracker on Sam's car, realize where they're going and they freak out about it, they're like shit, and we finally get to see it, and it's all the full shot of the house. It's like, oh yes, this is the house from the original. This is Amber's family bought this house, and this is where all the showdown's going to happen. And as far as little touches that I did kind of like the idea of what's the niece, the Randy's niece again, I keep forgetting the names. Mindy. I do like the idea of her watching the stab version of Randy's death as the killer's sneaking up behind her. And she does survive. I did notice that both her and her brother survived at the end, and it was almost like the directors were like, okay, we had to have some kill scenes, but man, we kind of like some of these characters we invented. We want to keep them alive for a sequel. So we're just, I think she kind of was open-ended for her. I feel like the brother, though, seemed like he was definitely dead. But
I was surprised.
Yeah, but at the end, he's on a stretcher like, I'm fine, guys. I'll be back in the sequel. It's fine. So she gets stabbed a bunch. That's the thing. Everyone gets stabbed. Gale gets shot. Cindy gets stabbed. Sam gets stabbed in the side when Richie finally reveals he's true to it. And that's the thing. We have the big showdown take place in the same kitchen that the showdown in the original film took place. So we do repeat a lot of the beats. Oh yeah, what did you think of the whole third act? All this stuff in the house.
There was a lot of stuff I liked. There was some stuff I didn't like. Again, it's a little weird because there's stuff that like pops out to me as like being weird, but then later it's like, oh, okay, I see the justification for it. Like, why the hell are you having a party? Like, why would a friend, whose friend was like almost murdered, all of a sudden like throw a party? But then again, like, if you look at it as like, oh well, this is obviously being manipulated by these killers that are purposely reenact or remake their own the movie and pay homage to the original and stuff. Like, okay, I get that there's justifications and stuff for that. And
to be fair, like in the original film, it was also one of the killers that threw the party. So
that's true. Yeah.
It kind of tracks, actually.
Yeah, no, definitely. And we talked before about how that you don't really get a lot from this kind of friend group. I kind of like, how like, we're kind of seeing some, some meaty scenes with them again. And like, there's a lot of stuff I liked. I like when I forget what the brother's name was. I think it also started with an M. Oh wait, no, it didn't. It was Chad. Yeah, I like when he's like arguing with his girlfriend Liv about like he wants to have sex, and he's like, I don't know, you could be the killer. Like, I thought that was enjoyable.
No, that made me laugh. There was 2 scenes in the movie that gave me a legit laugh. One was when his girlfriend's saying, "Okay, let's go upstairs and have sex," and he's like, I'm not entirely sure you're not the killer, so maybe we shouldn't. That was funny. The other time I laughed is when all of the group all assembles to meet with Dewey and Sam earlier on, and they talk about the rules and they talk about requels and all the meta stuff. There's a moment where someone describes why Dewey could be the killer because he's washed up, he's a drunk, he has motivation, all the rest of it, and then Dewey just says, "Are you sure you're not the killer? Because that cut deep." I'm not gonna lie, that line made me laugh.
That was funny. I like that.
So a couple of good jokes.
Yeah.
2 good jokes. I'll give them 2 good jokes.
So that's good. And then and yeah, like I like the scene with Mindy and Amber, like when they're going to the basement to get beer and they're kind of like each eyeing each other and being like, "Why do I know that you're not the killer? How do I know that you're not the killer?" Then obviously it's, when you look at it again, knowing that Amber's the killer, it's like, oh, it's interesting. But like, yeah, I like that scene. And then like you mentioned, yeah, I liked Mindy watching the their version of Stab, which is kind of funny that like, I don't know, that version like seems like, or the Stab movies, like, we don't get a ton of them. Like I guess we've seen like a little bit of clips like in the last movie, kind of when like they're showing the beginnings and stuff. But yeah, we haven't really seen much of the movies, and it's kind of funny that like, oh, they seem bad. Like the guy that's playing like the fake Randy like does not seem that good. But
what's funny, they're lucky actually they never showed the fake Randy, because Scream 2 shows you clips from Stab, and I did like, actually one of the little details that is quite good is that at the start of the film when Tara's been tested with the horror questions, I like that she just looks up one of the answers on IMDb.
Oh yeah.
That's actually really funny.
And then I think I didn't look at it quick enough, but it looked like when she's like looking through like the cast list that there were like some nods to other I don't know if like real actors from the movie or just like kind of people tangentially related.
Well, no, there's references to who they said was in it in Scream 2. In Scream 2, they mentioned David Schwimmer. I noticed his name was in the cast list.
Okay.
They mentioned Heather Graham, and she was the Drew Barrymore character in Stab from the start of Scream 2.
Okay.
When I see it in the theater.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if all of them were necessarily references, but at least like all the ones we saw were mentioned in Scream 2 were in that list. So.
Okay. Yeah, because I assumed like I was too lazy, but I was like, I'm sure if he paused the phone, there's probably some fun Easter egg there or something.
Yeah, if anything, it's not even really references or Easter eggs. It's more just they're being consistent with who they said was in Stab in the last one. But luckily, they never really meant that. There's even a joke in Scream 2 that like it's just some nobody who plays Randy. So that left it open for them to do a new scene from
funny.
Stab where they get to do this scene. It's a fun play on it, because obviously in Scream 1 he was watching it as someone else was watching him on a monitor, so it's kind of fun to see her watching this fake version of him being killed, watching Halloween with the killer sneaking up behind her. There's a fun kind of layer to that, which is all right. And I think some of like what you see of Stab is a little too accurate at times as to what it actually was in Scream. But at least this moment, no, it was being filmed. Like Gail was filming this in a van,
that's true, huh?
So it should be accurate because they had it.
That's a good point.
Recorded.
Yeah.
So genius.
Yeah. So what I will say is it does fall apart to me once the killers are revealed. Like it's not like I just necessarily dislike the stuff, but some of the motivations and that sort of thing, I'm just like, I just wasn't as I guess it didn't really feel like as much part of a movie as the movie that I thought we were kind of telling. Like, because when they start getting into things like about like toxic fandom and stuff, like it's like, okay, but like it doesn't feel like the movie has been talking about these subjects.
It's mentioned briefly when Mindy's explaining what a requel is. She talks about how you can't do a fresh complete remake anymore because the fans will lose their minds. And then there's like the videos that Thingy's watching on the phone about Scream 8 or Stab 8 about how they're mad that it's this weird flamethrower Ghostface. And it's like a crappy YouTube video where like people are saying this is terrible and the hashtag needs to be remake. It's very much doing Last Jedi kind of like stuff where toxic parts of the fandom are like being very, very shitty about it. Here's the thing, I actually think there's an interesting angle here that they could have potentially done if they focused on it more, which is the idea that the killers in this one are going to represent the toxic side of fandom. I think the problem is that other than them saying it here at the end, it doesn't really feel like it's doing it. And I would much rather get it from subtext and like sort of recognize that that's what they represent, rather than the characters just saying, no, fandoms aren't toxic. We're just we love the movies. They mean a lot to us, and that's why we're acting out like this. And honestly, it only feels half that. I feel like the other half is just, oh, we're just also just kind of crazy and love stab, and like I thought Amber especially came across just really.
Yeah, she's totally unhinged, which honestly I did think was kind of fun though. Like I liked when Gail and Sydney arrive at the house, and like, she's coming out, she's like, the killer's in there, and like the first thing they do is like, what do you think? Like, it's a trap. And then she just like tries to shoots at him right away. She's like, oh, like, screw this. I think I didn't really, she feels like very much a non-character, like before this, and then once she's revealed to be the killer, I do think she is kind of fun, like in a very like, oh, crazy unhinged kind of way. But yeah, it's still though, like, I don't know, it just still kind of feels like, oh, we haven't really been building up to this. It's just like, we just need to get to a point where the killers are out and revealed, and so we can kill them, which I think does lead to like some fun violence and kills and stuff. But I don't know, maybe I wasn't as into it, or maybe it wasn't exactly what I was hoping for. But I didn't hate it, but I also like wasn't like, oh man, I love this,
Yeah, and I think they revealed that Richie's one of the killers, which felt like an obvious direction to go in. When he says,
and actually, we're talking about like lines that made me laugh. I think like a little bit before he's revealed to be killed, I think he's like running out of the house, or I think it was during the house, unless it was in the hospital. But I think at some point he's running away and he says like, Ghostface is after me, which I just thought was funny.
Now, when he reveals to be the killer and he says something to the effect of, I know you're disappointed that it's me, but it's what's best for the movie. And all I could think was, not really. I don't know if I agree with that, writers. I really don't. What's interesting is that they wouldn't necessarily have went after the original cast. Like, Gail and Sydney could have just not came, and probably would have not been or attacked. I mean, because they weren't killed, obviously they survived. But and Dewey, maybe, like, if because it wasn't like it was his idea to go and see Dewey. It was Sam's. Right. So like, that was just almost like an ice. Oh, icing on the cake. I get to have the original people involved. I mean, they briefly mention that, we're going to make it look like Sam's the killer and all this, but they never really go into it too much, because basically they start like fighting back and like getting an upper hand before they can even explain what the rest of their plan is. They just say, you're unhinged, you're the daughter of a serial killer, and it's all you, and that's it.
The girl that played Amber, like, wasn't she in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I believe she was, yeah.
Yeah, and doesn't she get lit on fire in the end? Is it Brad Pitt's character has like a flamethrower? He just like torches her.
I didn't remember who she played, if I'm honest. I saw it earlier on that she was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, so I'll take your word for it. But yeah, she gets set on fire here, which, don't get me wrong, like her ending is pretty gnarly and fun, and even Richie's, it's less fun, but he gets stabbed a lot, so it's just pretty reasonably fun. But although they repeated the thing from the end of Scream 2 where like, they always get back up, you have to shoot them in the head, and then she immediately, like, Sam shoots Richie in the head, but then it's like the burned body of Amber who runs in screaming. That's the same as the end of Scream 2. They did the same thing where they shot Billy's mum in the head, but then it was Mickey who jumped up, and then they all had to turn around and shoot him. Like, so
yeah.
They repeated the same thing where, no, it's not the one who you were aiming for that got back up, it's the other one. So yeah, I mean, the ending's whatever. Like, I was almost expecting like a final twist, because it was kind of like spending a lot of time with the ambulances and them wrapping up, and Sam comes over and asks Sydney and Gail, says thanks first of all, but then asks like, are you ever normal after this? Am I going to be okay? And it's like, there'll probably be a sequel. Just you'll be fine. Yeah. So she's not great. And like I said earlier, it ends in the same shot as the original, where the camera pulls back, and it's the same house even. So it's the exact same kind of thing. And the crowd went mild. It's okay.
I liked it quite a bit more than you, obviously, but I get the points you're making, but also I don't know. I think it was still a fun watch. I like the characters. I liked the, a lot of the I guess, it's simple enough to do, but just, I don't know, just like, again, hearing like, these teens like talking about horror movies and, bringing up rules and talking about like, oh, like, what is it this time? It's a requel, and kind of like laying out that groundwork. Like, I do wish we got more of it, but that stuff all worked for me. And then, the kills, I thought were brutal and violent. Like, a lot of the gore and, that kind of stuff, I enjoyed quite a bit. So yeah, I'm not gonna say it's perfect.
Can I just I want to map out the villains here after the first one.
Okay.
So Scream 2 has Billy's mother. Mm-hmm. Scream 3 has Sidney's unknown long lost brother, who is the son of Maureen Prescott. Scream 4 has Sidney's cousin, and Scream 5 has Billy's
daughter, illegitimate daughter, or whatever.
Oh, she's not the villain, I suppose. To be fair, she's not actually one of the killers. Basically what I'm saying is who's going to have a relative next movie that we can revolve the plot around?
Well, I mean, they made a point about it in this movie where they were saying that, that it has like something to do with like relatives. So. Yeah, because there was someone that was, we talked about him earlier, the Kyle Gallner's character that was like Stu's nephew or whatever.
Yeah.
But, I mean, again, I guess comparing it with the other movies, it is kind of ridiculous. But yeah, it didn't bother me in this because it seemed like that was kind of a specific point that they were trying to make. But,
it's the convoluted mess that is the Scream chronology at this point is quite something.
I mean, like, if you don't like it, that's fine, but I do think that is kind of like an aspect that a lot of people seem to like from the movies, because I think there is a bit of cheesiness and soap opera-iness to it. Like, the first one was definitely the more probably the more serious or whatever out of all of them, but I mean, there's still like some goofy stuff in it. I mean, you have what's his face, Wes Craven, like dressed up like Freddy Krueger. I don't know if it's like a franchise that you want to take like too seriously.
I mean, it's not as bad, obviously, but it's a little bit into that Saw territory of just the convoluted. Like every sequel has to add a new layer to the mystery and the history of the characters. So. The further we go, the more convoluted the family trees of these characters get. So it's just something that sticks out to me. And it's not like I don't necessarily enjoy finding out someone's related. I definitely don't enjoy like them seeing the ghost of their father with crappy like de-aging CG, and I just Scream 2 onwards, the whodunit element is like the worst thing about these movies. I'm like, just give me a killer in a mask or something. And I know people are going to say, oh, but that's just like a slasher movie. You're just taking away what Scream. Well, it can still be meta. It can still do meta things. I just, like, I feel like because they have to have a killer revealed that is connected to someone, it shoehorns them into having to, like, do these convoluted connections and, like you say, these soap opera style family trees and revelations. And I'm just not really all that about it. It's it's a bit too CW at times, and that's what I'm saying. Some of the kills are fun in this one though. There is a few good jokes. I do like some of the points that it makes, but I don't think it necessarily has anything great to say about legacy sequels as much as it kind of pretends that it does. But and like I say, there's a couple of scenes where it really has to force a lot of exposition or emotional like resolution, and in one case it has to do both in the same scene, and it feels like a rushed thing, so it's a shame. But yeah, so I'm just lukewarm. Like, you know what, I didn't need another Scream movie. I don't need a sixth one, but we'll review it when it comes out and I'll give it a chance. We'll see how it is. But it's very middling for me. But I guess we're at the point, Tim, where we can rate the film. So what would you like to rate Scream 5?
Well, I'm actually going to give it a pretty high score. Obviously, probably going to be much higher than you. But I think I'm going to go as high as an 8. I had a really good time watching this, and again, I was I was expecting it, to be. I was expecting not to hate it just because of some of the positive stuff, but I wasn't really expecting to love it. Just kind of based on the not being the biggest fan of like Ready or Not or whatever, and again just I'm not always like ride or die for the Scream movies, but yeah, what can I say? I had like a really fun time watching it, and I'll definitely be watching this again at some point in the future, not right away because hey, we got so many movies to watch.
Of course.
But at some point I think especially since the Scream movies, there's only 5 movies in the franchise, so it's not too daunting. So I'm sure at some point I'll have like a week where I'll be like, yeah, I'm gonna watch all the Scream movies again or something. But yeah, I was surprised. I like this quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't think I will. Probably. I mean, the only reason I really watched Scream 2, 3, and 4 again is because we were reviewing them on the show. And the great thing about Scream 5 is that my first time watch was us doing it on the show. So I don't see myself.
Get it out of the way.
Yeah, I don't see myself wanting to rewatch these. And I mean, it says something that I bought the first one on iTunes when it went 4K, and I don't really have any desire to buy the sequels, and I'm okay with that. That's fine. But hey, as far as my score, I mean, honestly, I'm even with what you were saying, I'm surprised at the 8. I was expecting maybe a 7 at most. So a little surprised that you went into like great territory. I will. I'm happy to give it a 5.5.
All right.
It's watchable. It's fine. It's completely unnecessary, and I felt legacy sequel fatigued as I was watching it. And just because they point it out doesn't necessarily mean that or change the fact that that's what they're doing. Here's the funny thing is they already did the nostalgia of the house in the third movie because they had like the movie set, they recreated it,
right?
So they already did that, kinda. So that's kind of funny to me, but here we are. Scream 5 is just okay. Hey, it's better than Scream 3.
Right?
Okay, go with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very low bar, but yeah,
I mean, it's just a low bar. I
agree with that for sure, though.
It's perfectly watchable. Right? If you think I'm being too harsh, fair enough. But I think it's just perfectly watchable, and
I mean, and the fifth entry in a franchise, at that point you're kind of just expecting watchable. I would say.
True.
So I mean, is it better than Hellraiser 5? I would say yes.
Yes, because Hellraiser 5 is like a 2 out of 10, like a shit fest.
Friday 13th Part 5, I would say yes, although some of the sequels after that I do think, I do like quite a bit, but I'm not a big fan of 5.
I'm not a big fan of 5. I may enjoy 5 more than this, though.
Yeah. Nightmare on Elm Street 5, that's a little tough. Not as many people like that one, but I'm a defender of the Dream Child. But I don't know. I probably would put this above it though, even though I do enjoy that one. But yeah, I mean, Halloween 5, Jesus,
that's rough. That's a rough one. I mean, admittedly, yes, most horror movie number 5s aren't necessarily the greatest thing ever. That said, though, if we compare it to other genres, I feel like Police Academy 5 has it by the balls. It has no chance. That's the same at Miami Beach Town. That's where Commandant Lassard gets kidnapped and he thinks it's like an exercise and it's not real, so he plays along all nice. But they're actually on pursuit trying to like rescue him. It's gold.
Sounds like a hoot.
I will take this time to thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you very much to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Board Now, Christopher Moy, David Brown, Al Tradesman, and Alison M. Fordyce. They're Patreon producers over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. You can, of course, go over there and support us for as little as $1 per month and help keep all the content coming. And for that $1, you get a bonus episode every month. The last one we did was The Last Matinee, which was a film with a lot of buzz from last year from Uruguay. Which I learned while we were talking about it. I thought it was a Spanish film because they speak Spanish in Uruguay, I learned. But yeah, so you can check out that review as well as we did Werewolves Within last well, not last month. That was the previous month. And we have an interesting one coming up this month. But you also get Even More Screams, which is a newer bonus show we do on Patreon, which is once a month we get together and just sort of talk casually about all the different horror movies we've both been watching. So it'll be kind of like shorter, spoiler-free discussions and just kind of like catching up and getting a bit of a flavour for different things. So you get those two shows for $1 per month. Go and have a look and see if you're interested. But yes, so go do that. You guys will like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff. And before we go, I should make Tim post for the thumbnail. I remembered. You thought I'd forgotten. I didn't. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. Pause. Perfect. I was about to tell you to put your head down, but you did it naturally after like a second. So
yeah, my instinct is always to go up. I know how you hate that.
Oh yeah, your head gets cut off, so you look stupid in the just a flat line at the top.
Why don't you get a taller camera?
It's your camera, dingbat. Oh dear. So yes, hopefully you had fun with Scream 5. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks or so time with our next regular episode, but patrons could look for the next bonus episode next week. So thank you very much for joining us. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies. We're out. Goodbye. I forgot what I said.
Peace and love.